Have you ever heard the adage, content is king?
Or do you believe that the more content you share, the more people are attracted to you? But, what if content is not king? Today's topic, context, and conversion.
Welcome to the Influencers Journey Show. My name is Suzanne Hart.
And I'm Taria Hodge.
And the big question is this: how does the average entrepreneur like you and I, who started with limited time, zero marketing budget, and little to no online presence, get their authentic message into the marketplace and become a person of influence?
And what skills must you learn? And most importantly, who are you required to become to magnetically attract your divine client and build a loyal following? Welcome, Suzanne. Welcome back to the Influencers Journey Show. It has been a minute.
It has. December, I always just take some time off. So it's January. I'm excited for 2024. I'm excited for what it holds. So yeah, this is such a great conversation to get things started. So what did it bring up for you? Content, context, conversion.
Oh my goodness. It's a lot of good stuff, juicy stuff. And it's one of the things, as you know, on my journey that I have been working on. So for those of our super achievers who are not familiar with me, maybe they're jumping on the video for the first time. My backstory is I am the behind the scenes girl. And so being the behind the scenes person, I always thought that content would have been the thing that would grow my business, gain me brand awareness, exposure, especially in the social media marketplace. And I found out that content is not the thing. So I've always heard the adage, like we said, content is king. So that's why we're here to answer the question, what if content is not king?
I love it. You are like so many people that I meet. And I wasn't much different when I first started this journey. And then of course I started speaking and working with a great coach. And one of the things he always talked about was context, context, context. And
Mhm.
as I began to understand the power of context, I began to watch other trainers, other presenters, other coaches. And I remember one particular coach, very brilliant, very talented. Content is on point. Like content is powerful. And I would watch her present and she would get up there and she was content heavy. However, at the very beginning of almost every presentation that I saw, there was a disconnect between her and the audience. And and what I realized was the audience didn't have a background or a backdrop to situate her content. So even I, who understood her content at the very beginning, would be like, okay, where are we? What's she talking about? How does this all fit together? So we're going to talk about today how you create that environment, that context for great content to land.
Yeah. And then we're going to also add the other part to it, which is the conversion. And when we take a look at our content, that's what we want ultimately from our content. We want people to be able to take action on the things that we do or the things that we say. So whether we're speaking on stage or whether you're on an online format. So that's one of the things that I got excited about. How does it all fit together? And what's the order? What's the process? And what are the things that as content creators, influencers, we should have top of mind when we communicate with our audience?
I'm excited for this conversation. It is going to be juicy. So if you're just joining us, welcome, welcome, welcome. As you pop on, let us know who you are, where on the planet you're joining us from, and what you actually do while you're living. Who do you serve? Why are you excited? Let us know what brought you out here tonight. to listen and participate in this conversation? What would you like to learn? And this is the other thing, light up the comments section. Let us know what's landing. Put your questions in there. We will do our best to get them answered. And if we do not, we will come back and answer them for you. If you're listening to the replay, hashtag replay, and do the exact same thing. Let us know who you are, where you're joining us from, who do you serve, why do you serve them, what brought you out tonight. Get in the conversation.
All right. And then the last thing before we get this party bus moving, for all you super achievers out there, take a minute right now to go ahead and hit the subscribe button. That way you will be able to get notified whenever we go live for our Influencers Journey Show. And then I'm also going to ask you to go ahead and share this video with your friends, other super achievers like yourself that you know.
So for those who are just joining us, just jumping on, welcome back to the Influencers Journey Show. My name is Suzanne Hart. I'm here with my girl, Taria Hodge, and we have a conversation for you. Our topic is content, context, and conversion. What does that actually mean? So let's dive right into this conversation. So why do you think that most of us are so attached to our content?
Oh, wow.
Like we hugging it up. People,
I could answer that question.
I mean, have you ever been to a presentation where someone just bombards you with content? And even if they're going over time or the audience gets, they're like, no, I prepared this content, you're going to get it.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why are we so attached?
Oh gosh, so I could speak from my standpoint. So once again, I'm the behind the scenes girl turned center stage. And one of the things I remember when I first started on my entrepreneurial journey, I was that person who was definitely afraid of public speaking. And when I tell you all sorts of public speaking, whether it was on stages or even in small settings with rooms of 10 to 15 people. But one of the things that I recognized that I was really great at and I enjoyed was training. And so I used to be a trainer at one of the companies that I interned with. And I remember just in my mind, I hope they don't ask any questions about me. Let's just stick to the content. I'm not important. There's nothing to see over here. The content is on the board. And for years, that was my mindset that we don't need to share anything about me. It's okay. Let's just stick to what we came to learn because I felt uncomfortable. So I'm going to say it was that emotion that used to come up for me. How much of me do I share with, like, let's be honest, with strangers? Because a lot of times I had no relationships with the people that were in the room training. A lot of time I'm meeting them for the first time. So what is it that I'm supposed to share? How do I do this? And so it was definitely a comfort zone for me to just stick to the facts. Let's just stick to the details of the training and we'd be just fine.
It's so funny because one of the most common things I've heard, and even the person I'm speaking about when I opened up, who's amazing, great content, exact same words, it's not about me. It's about the content. It's about the information. I don't need to really be present. And yes, there's an aspect of that. However, there's a part of it that is about you. You are the messenger. And the question is, how much do I trust the messenger? I know when I started doing this, Taria, and when I moved from content heavy to more context heavy, if you will, it made me so nervous because content is pretty black and white. I can prepare it, I know it, I train on it, it is safe, and oftentimes we learned our content from somewhere else. Right? So it feels safe. We can say the authorities say, the this say, all that stuff. When you come to context, context is about you. It's about your journey. It's about your story. It's about where you failed, how you struggled, all these different things. And I know for myself, the only question I kept asking when I was first asked to do this was, well, how are they going to see me as an expert if I talk about all the places I struggled, and will it not discredit me? So that was my first question. And my second one was, oh no, this is really vulnerable. People are going to see way too much of me. I don't want them to see that much of me. And truth be told, I liked being seen as the expert. I liked being seen somewhat in my perfection. And not that I liked it like braggadocious, it just felt good. It felt safe. I was confident there. And now we're talking about really just getting a little messy on stage, a little vulnerable, a little transparent, a little too authentic. That's what we're going to answer. But that was the thing. And I think for me, content is safe. Content doesn't require me to be vulnerable. Content is rehearsed. Content often is true and tested, and therefore no one's going to challenge me. When I bring myself, my ideas, my opinions, my thoughts, my journey to the stage, I leave myself open to being challenged. I leave myself open to having questions that are not about the content. I don't want that. Or do I? That is really the thing.
So I think you made such an important point just now when you shared the difference between your perfectionism, and being an expert. And
Yeah,
so I think like that's the main thing that I had to come to understand that there's a difference. So there's a difference between wanting to show up perfect. And it's that thing that you said, if I stand here and I allow people to get too far off from what it is that I want them to know is pre-planned in my head. And they start asking questions that I might have to go a little bit outside of what I plan to share or plan to say.
yeah.
Sometimes it's not that I don't know the answer. I just want to show up being perfect. I want to sit in that place of saying, well, yes, I arrived here at the end, but you don't really need to know all of the failures, the crying moments. And let me just say this, I cry a lot. So, all of those ugly moments in between. What I wanted people to know and see is that I am here now. How I learned what I learned isn't really important, but this is what I learned. And I could show and share this with you. And so it's that thing, like you said, the dance between catching yourself when you're in the mode of sitting in perfection and wanting to be perfect
Mm,
versus understanding that all of it,
is
all
relevant.
makes us the expert is our experiences that we have that people turn to us and say, oh my God, that's the person. Not only do they have the book knowledge, but they have the experience to guide me through the transformation that I desire. And that's what I
Absolutely.
want.
It's interesting because I remember when I first started family counseling and I was working with a family and I was struggling and I was frustrated because I just couldn't come up with the answers. I couldn't figure it out. And I remember sitting with my supervisor and everybody's hadn't heard me talk about Miss Joy Lepage. And Joy looked at me and she said, but you don't need to have all the answers.
Mhm.
And I was like, what do you mean? I'm the counselor, I'm the this, I'm the that. And she said, no, you're supposed to guide a process. You're supposed to bring information to the table and marry it with people's experiences and all these different things. That never left me because two things she did. One was she freed me up to be able to say, I don't know, let's figure it out. This is where my knowledge begins and ends, and create this process where people get in and we learn together. The second thing it that happened was that I felt off the hook.
Mm.
I took a lot of pressure off myself. And when I took all that pressure off myself and I really understood the power of my journey and sharing my stories and not having the answers, oh my goodness, that's when magic began to happen. And I think the thing I want to highlight from what you said is when we talk about the struggles, when we talk about our mistakes, when we talk about those crying moments, and we've all had them, Some of you won't admit it, but we know you have. Uh, we've all had them. I want you to remember that those moments are the places that your audience, the people you want to serve, they're probably stuck in those same places or places that are very similar. And so when you share these backstories, this context that brought you from that place to where you are, really what you're saying to them is, I get you. I've been there. I understand. And what they're saying is, you see me, I can trust you. And oh, you can take me somewhere. That is context. And context is about the journey. Context is about, you know, how did I get here? And I think the thing I really want to highlight, and we talk about this often, is context is experience.
Mhm.
And when we live through something, there are emotions, ways of beings, experiences that are difficult to put into words. They're difficult to express just through content. And so the storytelling of it creates that context that is that emotional, experiential, situational place for your content to sit in. And that's why it's the secret sauce. That's why it's your secret weapon, because when you create the environment of the journey, and then you say, so now you understand how I got here, the highs and lows, what I might have had to learn. Now let me drop the content inside that frame. And now people are like, oh, I know why. I know a bit of the experiential how. Now I'm going to listen to what you have to deliver from that perspective. Magic happens.
So thank you for sharing it and putting it so eloquently. But I had a question around that, and I know many of our super achievers listening in, they have a question around it too. And because I get the questions all the time, and the question is like, how exactly do you do that? So how do you take all of these messy experiences and turn them into something beautiful, like you said, your super weapon that would allow your content to land? And I'll share a story with you. I remember a time I went to a book signing, and well, let me tell another story. So I remember a time I went to an event, and I went to this event, and a young lady was there, and we got into a conversation. And before you know it, we were both standing in the hallway crying, crying. But guess what? We had a heartfelt moment. I felt connected, but it didn't lead me to buy her products and her services.
Oh, yeah.
So what is that all about? So I'm going to turn to you to ask, how do you use those experiences? Because there's a way that you do that. And I think once our superstars or super achievers understand that, then it opens them up to think a little bit more about how they're going to use their experiences. Because it
Right.
isn't just about sharing any and any old thing. There's an art to it.
There truly is. And you know when you meet a master storyteller, because they will take you on a journey, and if they do it properly, you will be left inspired and uplifted. And the question is, how do you do that? And so when we teach storytelling, when I teach storytelling, one of the key components that we talk about is the victim and the hero. And in every story, there's a victim and there's a hero. And the real answer to that question, Sharia, is, from what perspective do you tell the story? Do you tell it from the perspective of the victim?
Mhm.
Do you tell it from the perspective of becoming the hero in your life? Because victims wait to be rescued, heroes find answers. Or do you tell it from the perspective of the villain who's in competition and out to get people. Do you hear the different flavors? Now, what I want everyone to understand is there is a reason in our society we are obsessed with superheroes. We love them. And the reason we love superheroes is superheroes are born in difficult moments. Superheroes find their superpower in those moments where they're so challenged that transformation is required. So when you and I tell a story, not about how we were the victim, and that is the focus, or how some villain beat us up and we were the victim, and that is the focus. But when we tell the story about this circumstance happened, and that circumstance was such a gift to me, when I took the time to look at it, because yes, it was difficult. Yes, I fell down, but in the middle of it, I learned so much of myself. I grew so much. I went through such a transformation that the person that you see standing here today is not the person that started the journey. When we tell those stories, people become inspired. And why? Because superheroes are rare. And they always inspire us to believe in more and to also see what we are capable of becoming. And when you're able to paint pictures and tell stories that evoke that place in people, you've worked magic.
You know, as you're talking, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking this is so important, especially in our arena of marketing and social media. So one of the things that I got really present to in taking a look at copy on social media, you could always almost tell where a person is sitting from the stuff that they share on social
Yeah.
media. And it's so important because once again, stories are the things that connect us. And so a lot of times I would have clients come to me and say, oh, I I have an issue with the people that I'm attracting into my business. They,
Mhm.
for whatever the reasons are, and they're countless. And it took me a minute to really link the two together. So is it that you just have bad luck or bad faith that you attract this type of client, or are you aware of the messaging that you are putting out in the marketplace that attracts certain people to your business? And so if
Mhm.
your conversation is running in a vein and it's not the vein of attracting the people that you desire to work with, then you're not going to pull those people to you. You're going to pull another subset of people to you because that's the conversation that you're having. And so if you're writing and you're sharing, and even in the conversations that you have, you're still sitting in victim mode, then
Yeah.
you're going to attract the people who are in that place and they're not ready to move on. They want to, have a glass of wine, maybe a bottle of wine and wine. And they found that person because that's the thing that you put out there.
Absolutely.
Now, when you shift it around, and I had to learn how to do this too, so I'm not exempt from the equation. When you shift it around and said, you know what, this was the experience. So I get it. I've been there, but this is how I came out on the other side. So now I could help you through on the other side. Now that's a different type of person that you're attracting. Now you start to pull the people who are ready to move. So sometimes it's so important for us to be aware of the stories. And I love how you say it all the time, not just the things that we say out loud, how we say it, but the stories that we have running in our background. Because
Yeah.
still running in our background is going to come out in the foreground. And that's how we attract people in our lives and we attract people in our business.
And I love this piece of the conversation because it is so important that when we take the stage as coaches, trainers, all those different things, we must have done our work first. And
Mhm.
I'm not talking the work about learning the content, because that's actually the easier part. Learning the content, learning the information, learning the theories, learning the how-tos. The work we are required to do to really embody that person who has influence and moves people is our own work. And in the law of attraction, one of the universal laws, they say that what we put out comes back like a boomerang.
Yep.
Right? And so if you're attracting a certain type of person, don't look at the person and say, oh, I just keep attracting these people. You got to look at the source, and the source, you are the cause. Law of cause and effect. You are the cause, and the effect is who's coming. So then we have to do the work, and you're absolutely right. It is the stories that we are telling ourselves and the seat that we choose to occupy in the story, victim, hero, villain, will attract the circumstances and people that keep coming into our lives. So it really is about, and that's why I love mindset. So that's why I love the two put together, the whole art of storytelling. And you layer that with taking 100% responsibility for my thinking, my mindset, the way I walk through the world. That is when we're doing the work. And that's when things begin to move and change. We are our first product. We are our first sale. Will you buy me?
Yeah.
Is this product something that you're willing to purchase in my way of being, my energy, the conversations I have, all those things, my positivity? Am I a source of inspiration? How am I influencing you? Are you moving forward, or am I sucking your energy? Like, all those questions we've got to ask ourselves and be accountable for.
So true, so true. And like I said, that's the thing, because in the space of influencers, entrepreneurship, running a business, even on social media, that's what we all want. We want to be able to inspire people to take action. And I love that that's the definition that we have coined and we use here for Influencers Journey Show, is to show up in such a way where we inspire other people to take the action. And I love it because it's all about the know, like, and trust factor. And being able to overlay stories or experiences with the content is definitely the mover of the needle.
And you said it, great leaders, great influencers, are storytellers.
Mhm.
And they are, because they understand that leadership is not telling and selling. It's not telling people what to do. It's not giving content. It's not tasks. Leadership is inspiration and being that source where people choose to take action. And they choose just purely out of inspired action. That is influence. And so the question you have to ask yourself, I have to ask myself each day, is, am I a source of inspiration to people, in that I can influence them to act in a particular way, in a way that moves the world forward, in a way that moves their life forward, in a way that moves them forward, in a way that they look in the mirror and they go, oh my gosh, I was so inspired by who I was being today. That's what we're talking about. And that's a tough road, because that's inner work.
It's like that gut check.
And trust me, trust me, totally is. And the gut never lies. In my
Mhm.
world, the gut never lies.
Yeah.
So as we pull all this together, I think the question in this conversation, so we've got context, content, context, conversion, and conversion is moving to action. And so really we want to just kind of come full circle and talk about, how does all of this move people to action?
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
know, I know what it is for me. What is it for you?
Well, that's the thing we're talking about, and we're overlaying it. When we take a look at our content, the content lets people know that, hey, you are an expert in a subject matter. So yes, we could share data, we could share details, we could share processes, frameworks, whatever it is you call it inside of your industry. So you're learned. That's your content. But when it comes to your context, your experience. So did you just read it in a book, or, did you apply it? What was your experience coming through it? Because I'll share one of the things that ignites me on this journey is I read a lot of things and I go through a lot of stuff, and in reading it, it sounds so exciting. And I was just, yes, let me go ahead and do it. And then I go ahead and I do it, and I'm just like, oh, wait a minute. That didn't quite work for me, like the author of the book. So
What's the missing?
what's the missing? And
Yeah.
and so it's that thing of looking at it and say, oh, what's my experience coming through this? Now, when I share my experience with, other people and say, hey, maybe not so fast. This is what, it took for me to be able to get the action that I want, to get the result that I want, then it's a whole different story. And so when I take a look, like you just said, when I take a look at all of those pieces together, it makes it so much easier when people encounter you, whether it's a stage, whether it's on your social media, whether it's in your business, for them to journey with you, for them to say, you're my person, for them to take the actions that you want. So in my spaces, I love the word conversion. So it's like, there's so many different types of conversions or actions that we should be measuring on social media. How are we getting people to move forward? So if people don't know you, you don't give them the opportunity to know you, not just your content. If they don't feel a bond with you, that
Yeah.
like how we say it, that heart to heart connection, that emotional connection, they like you. And then if they don't trust you, and the trust is solidified in the experience. So the whole thing. So if they don't know, they don't like, they don't trust you, then no action is gonna happen. No conversions are gonna happen. So that's the biggest thing.
Absolutely. And when we talk about that know, like, and trust factor, I really got to understand this when I started speaking on larger stages. And of course, you go into a cold room. And so for me, it was the stage began, my talk began the minute I entered that building. And I really want people to get this. It began when the minute I entered the building. And for me, a big part of starting my talk was making myself available to people in terms of, hello, how are you? How you doing? These little conversations, all these things, because in my mind, I'm warming me up and I'm warming the audience up. I'm creating that sense of familiarity. Now, no one may know I'm the speaker, but I'm just creating connection, and I'm warming up the room for myself as well. When I take the stage, the first sale I'm going to make is me. Know, like, and trust, because I can deliver the best content, but if I'm not your person, you don't know me, like me, and trust me, you're probably not going to buy. So my first sale is me. And I always tell anyone I work with that there's that moment on stage where you've closed the room, right? And I'm not talking about you've closed the room in terms of your product. I'm saying you closed the room in terms of you. And there is that moment where I know that, okay, this room, we're good, we're good. And I'm not going to close everybody. Well, let me just say this. Not everybody's going to buy from me.
Right.
But I can close the room and increase the likelihood that people buy. And so once the room is closed, then I can start dropping content and positioning that content inside the context and continuously reclose the room. And then I get to an offer, and it works kind of in that process. And how I know is when I get off the stage, I can't walk. If there's a speaker that doesn't come up after me, people will be like, oh my goodness, Suzanne. And when I'm walking down the hall, it's Suzanne, Suzanne, Suzanne. And I've learned this, and oh my goodness, and oh my gosh, thank you. Tears. this is what I took away. There's a familiarity that begins to happen that wasn't available before. People will wait to talk to you. People will be looking for you. People will be like, oh my gosh, when you said this. And it's not about whether they will buy from you in the moment per se. There will be those people that are ready, but there will be those people who will start journeying with you as a result of that first sale, you. And they may buy the next year when it's perfect timing for them. But the question is, can you build enough know, like, and trust that they say, you know what? I want to follow you. I want to get to know you. I want to create a deeper relationship. That is the first sale. That's contacts.
I love it.
Move people to action. Create the contacts for them to say, man, yes, you're my person.
All right. So, and thank you for that, because that's what it's all about. You know, no matter what arena you're in, like you said, whether you're on large stages, you're on smaller stages, you're on one-on-one, you're on social media, you have to be able to make all three work for you, have all elements in there.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I'm chomping at the bit to ask you the next question. So, in your work, how easy is it for people to shift from content to stories?
Oh my goodness. It's not. And I mean, and it's an intellectual game, right? We are so conditioned to drop content, to drop content, to drop content,
Mm,
that people have a hard time making a shift. And that's why in our program, we give you a practice community, because it actually takes practice. And I think it takes practice because of two things. One is most people feel very vulnerable.
mhm.
And they'll start in story and they'll switch over to content in the middle of their story because they really actually don't want to be seen.
Yeah.
Right? That's too authentic. It's too vulnerable. It feels awkward. So that's the first part of it. There's a second part of it that is really key. And if you watch Elisa Nichols, does it brilliantly. If you watch Fly Girl, Venus Armour,
Mhm.
does it masterfully. There's this dance between embodying the story and narrating the story. And most people want to narrate the story. And when I talk about narrate the stories, like you sit outside it and you tell the story, but you tell it from a not emotionally moving place. It's like a
Mhm.
narrator.
Mhm.
A great storyteller goes back into the story and tells it in such a way where the emotions are palpable and you feel it. Then they come out and they narrate, then they go back in and they embody it, then they come out. And there's this beautiful dance that happens. For that to occur, you just got to be able to get comfortable actually being in your story, because narration happens. You just need to know when to do it. But to be in that story and revisit a place in such a way that it moves people, for a lot of people, it's like, oh my gosh, that's like, woo, vulnerable. And do I want to go there? This is the second thing. You can't tell a story you have not worked through.
Ooh.
And so oftentimes people don't want to tell the story because content has us avoid doing the work.
Mhm.
So in our program, we have this concept called earn the right. And anyone who's taken the program, they know there's this messiest part in the middle. Thank you, Robin Sharma. Messy in the middle. So there's this messy part in the middle where people are crying, they're having breakthroughs, they're thinking they signed up for therapy. No, you did not. You're just doing the work to clear the emotions that come from unforgiveness, anger, shame, blame, all those things, so you can give them up, so that you can actually sit on stage and go back into the story without being triggered and narrate the story from a place of the hero, not the victim. And that's why it's hard for most people, because they haven't done that work. It's a process. Storytelling is an art. I'm a
Yeah.
little, I'm a little biased, Tria. You can tell, eh?
Well, no, it's absolutely true. And that's what I said earlier, you know, in the broadcast, that it is an art, it's a fine dance of doing this, because sometimes it's two ends of the spectrum. So some people don't want to share the story because, like you said, they haven't worked through the story. So the story is still hard and it's still painful. And so in their mind, like, how can this benefit anybody? So I don't need to share it. And then the other side is people share all sorts of stories, and the end user, or the audience, you're like, why did they share that story? What did I, get?
I'm traumatized now. I
Right,
need to
I'm
leave this
traumatized, and
room.
I've been in some rooms where I definitely have been traumatized with some stories. Some stories actually had the opposite of the intended effect. And so it's when, as I started to work with you and I started to understand, it brought such an awareness to me that I could unpack things faster. And so, oh, as I go through this, what is it that I learned from this process? And what about this can I share to help somebody else?
Yeah.
And that's the moving, of the action. And I'll share with you just really quick. I tickled myself the other day because I was making wraps. And, you look at the video and this is what the video said the end product should be. Well, my wrap didn't come out like the video or the picture. It was a total hot mess. And what I learned from that is it's like, wow, that is the journey.
Mm-hmm.
It is the journey
No
because
matter what it is.
yeah, so the first time that you do something, you are absolutely going to fail. You are going to mess it up, and that's okay. That's the learn. It's okay. So it's not to just sit in the mess, but how are we moving forward? And it's just like, oh my gosh, like that's a post. That's how I start looking at social media.
Training, it's a
Like,
training. It's a training.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's a trading. It's
absolutely.
like, oh my gosh, let me go, share this because, it's going to bless somebody else because this is what I learned.
And what a gift, Taria, to be able to say to someone, oh yeah, when I started, I messed up in the exact same way. Oh my goodness. And it was so difficult to get back up, but I did, but I learned so much because the most lonely place, particularly as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as a trainer, is when you feel alone in your
Right.
failed thing, right? And you feel like it's only you, and you start to personalize it. The gift we give some people is or people, everyone, when they get this, is we normalize failure. We normalize the messiness. We normalize the ups and downs. And then people are like, oh, I get the lay of the land now. It's like landmines. Yes, it is. You got to navigate them. You got to learn to navigate them. And then after a while, you're like, okay, I see the landmine. I'll just go around. We know. You got to learn that art. But if no one's telling us that that's what you got to learn, and they're making it look all like easy peasy, I don't sweat. I don't cry. I don't get hurt. We sweat, cry, get hurt, get knocked down. The art is how do you get up and what needs to occur for you to get up. That's what we're giving people. And that's what context is. It's that stuff. I like to call it the goo. If we're building a brick and bricks, this is the mortar, the goo that holds that chunk of content in place in a real way. That's what we're doing. So, great question. I want to ask you, because I wanted to put it in a social media context. How does this whole focus on content affect our sales process?
Oh,
And
huge.
I'm not talking sales as in necessarily a purchase, but I'm talking about a conversion, as you're saying.
Mhm.
Someone's acting in the way you want them to.
Right, right. So one of the things that as I was preparing for the show, I thought about was how I thought things would work when I step into this arena. So one of the things that, I prided myself in being able to do is collect what I call swipe files. And what a swipe file is, you'll take a look at other influencers' copy. And one of the first things that you want to check is you want to check to see what's their engagement on the copy, how many likes, how many shares. And it's like, oh, this is such great copy, for an ad. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm just going to change around a few words and then literally my post or my ad is going to take off. And you do that, and then it's just like crickets.
Mm.
And that was one of my first indication. And then people started to ask me, or people started to say, not really ask, and they started to put this thing on themselves. They said, I'm not good at creating copy. I'm not good at doing this. And it wasn't until I really understood the power of story and context and being able to pull from our own authenticity. That's the thing that gives us life. And so when we
Ah,
talk about content and the effect that it has on our sales and our conversions, this is the thing. What I found is a lot of times we have a tendency to start at the end. And so when we put out our content out there, we have the intention or the desired result that we have in our mind, but we didn't lead or give a build up for
mm.
our people.
We didn't create the relationship, you mean?
You didn't create the relationship.
Got it.
And so when it comes to the social media arena, it's thinking through that in everything that you do. So when you start off with your content, whether it's written content, whether it's video content, how well are you giving your audience the opportunity to know you? And
Mm.
it's infusing your stories into that content. So can you take your audience on a journey with you? And so once I started to really understand that process and put that process in the place, is how can I have them journey? How can, when I write this post, not only do they know that I have something to say, but they could connect with what I have to say because I'm going to share my experience around it.
Yeah.
And when I started to say, wow, this was really tough for me, this is where I fail. I remember the first time I talked about running an ad campaign, spent hundreds of dollars and not one lead, not one. I was so embarrassed. It was so hard for me to share that. But when I shared that, I was just like, oh, not from the point that I failed,
Yeah.
stuck there, but is what are the things that I learned
Mm.
coming through it and could now impart on my client to say, hey, look, this is the process and these are the things that you need to do. So it's when you take a look at social media, and that's why I love social media, because social media gives us the opportunity to take people on that journey with us. So it's not just you showing up when you have something to promote or something to sell. Can you give people that insight of who you are and the journey leading up to your products and your services that you're offering? Can you create a tribe around your message? Can you create a community of people, not just willing to surround you and your message, but they realize that they're like-minded individuals and they show up to serve each other. So that's one of the things that I absolutely get excited about when I take a look at the community that we're building. I see our super achievers showing up and supporting each other outside of the community.
Yeah.
They're coming back and they're saying, I connected with this person. I spoke on this person's stage. This person had me on their podcast. And that's what it's all about. So all of this is looking at your content in a different way. And so when you take a look at your desired results, whether, like you said, it's whether you're building your page, you're building your community, or you're leading people to your products and services, how do you pay attention to the content, make sure everything has the right context, because it's mindfulness that would allow you to get the action and the conversions that you want.
Great answer. And you know what it brings to mind is that we definitely need to do a call on this thing called the sales cycle.
Mhm,
Because I know for myself, until we started talking about it, I
mhm,
didn't fully understand it. And I think there are different stages of this cycle that are so key
right.
that if you miss one, nothing happens. It's like in story, if you miss a part of the process for story, nothing happens. So I would love for us to dive into this. This has been a great conversation.
Oh yeah, same here. I always enjoy when we have the opportunity to sit down and go deep into these conversations, because that's the commitment to our audience, is the Influencers Journey Show. So as we grow, we get a chance to share with our super achievers the things that we are working through as we grow, in the hopes that it inspires them, to grow along with us. So I absolutely love it.
Me too. It's a blessing of a journey. So I'm excited to share our thought for the day. And it comes from Lisa Crone, and she says, story, as it turns out, was critical to our evolution, more so than opposable thumbs. Opposable thumbs let us hang on. Story told us what to hang on to. Couldn't
Ooh,
be more appropriate.
ah,
I loved it. I love when I read that, I was like, oh my goodness,
that
this is
is
the top.
it.
Oh,
Great,
wow.
great,
So
great thought of the week. Thank you.
you are so welcome. You're so welcome. All right, everyone. So thank you so much for joining us for the Influencers Journey Show. Do we have gifts today?
Yes, as a matter of fact, ooh, for our super achievers, if you look in the description of the video, you will be able to access your freestyle speaker playbook. So go ahead, your freestyle speaker playbook, the link will be in the description of the video. And before we wrap it up, I'm going to let Suzanne share a little bit about what you will be able to get inside of the freestyle speaker playbook.
Oh my goodness. So this is a 5-step playbook, and it walks you through every step of being able to flip open your camera and command the stage on social media, command the stage, whether it's in a boardroom, whether you're doing a presentation, or if you're in a big room. It walks you through the process. Now, today we focused on storytelling, and that is one of the steps in the playbook. So we're going to walk you through this whole journey of moving from powerfully taking the stage, telling a great story, engaging your audience, finding the lessons in your story and how to present them, how to turn those lessons into a program, and finally, what do you need to do to be seen as an expert when you take the stage, a vulnerable, transparent, authentic expert. So it's packed in there. You'll get a little overview, or actually a pretty in-depth overview of what's available. So definitely register, pick it up, because it will be of value to you.
Awesome, awesome. All right. And so, Suzanne, I'm going to leave it to you to go ahead and close us out.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us for the Influencers Journey. I've been here hanging out with Taria Hodge, social media strategist. My name is Suzanne Hart, Mindset Mastery Mentor. We will be back here next Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with another juicy topic. Until then, remember to subscribe, like the page, share the content. And until we meet again, please know you are brilliant, know you are oh so very special, and we do this work because the world is waiting.
We didn't say the last part. The world is waiting for your unique gifts. Thank you, super achievers. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Take care.